Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Sleep Series Part 4 with Lisa Sarimi. My name is Nicole, and I'm on the Access Elite team that has brought this event to you today. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, Access Elite is a health and wellness company. We provide on-demand wellness content, same-day prescription delivery, and facilitate live virtual events such as these, as well as much more. We at Access Elite are so excited to facilitate this event and bring a little bit of positivity and connection to your day. So I just want to take a minute and thank you all for being here. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today. Lisa is a transformational coach, marriage and family therapist, and a yoga therapist. And with that, Lisa, please take it away.
Thanks so much, Nicole. It's always such an honor and a privilege to be here with all of you in Access Elite. Before we even get started, I just thought today it might be a good day to take 3 breaths together. So if you would mind just having your feet to the earth and finding a nice tall spine, maybe allowing your palms to be down. Take a deep breath all the way to the crown of your head. I am. Send the breath out all the way through your feet into the earth here. Inhale to the crown of your head. I am. Exhale all the way out through the feet here. Third one is the best one. Full breath into the crown. I am. And out through the feet here. And then as you're ready, you can flutter your eyes back open and we'll come back together. So I am very excited to go over the 4th part of our sleep series today. We're going to be diving in. Let me get the PowerPoint up here. 1 second. There we go. Sorry, guys. We're going to tie it all together today. In terms of sleep, we've been talking about a lot about stress, especially in the sleep series. We've been talking about the relationship between stress and sleep. And we're just going to kind of review it all together because it's through repetition that we can start to really understand and embody these concepts. And then after that, we're going to spend much more time today going over different ways that we can better manage our stress and better manage ourselves for optimal sleep. So we'll do a quick review on the stages of sleep because they're a really big piece of understanding sleep and helping us deepen our ability to navigate sleep. Where we'll review how stress can be a disruptor and how lack of sleep can be a stressor. And then that insidious cycle of stress and sleep. And then we'll dive into the hacks that'll hopefully support you in cultivating more sound sleep. So about 50 to 70 million people out there actually suffer from some type of sleeping disorder. So if you feel that this is an area you struggle, I just want you to know you're not alone. Almost 40% actually will report falling asleep at work and have done so in the last 30 days. And there's about 10 million out there that remain undiagnosed. So a big component that's involved in all of this concept with sleep is stress hormones and sleep hormones. So cortisol would be considered a stress hormone. Melatonin would be considered a sleep hormone. And our body produces both, but sometimes that production can be disrupted. Now, what we're looking at here is this ideal graph. The ideal world, we wake up in the morning and without having to just like inject coffee into our veins, we get this burst of energy through the cortisol production in our bodies, and that kind of carries us through our day. And then we start to, during the early evening or afternoon, we start to wind it down ideally so that the cortisol can drop and the melatonin can kick in. And then ultimately at the end, we're able to fall into sleep and go through this cycle again. So each one of us has our own circadian rhythm, and that would be in relationship to how these hormones are being released through our body, and our relationship to the way the sun and the moon's rhythms are in place too, because naturally we're not nocturnal beings. So we'll go over and we'll just do a quick review of these stages and cycles. These are really fundamentally at the heart of our ability to feel restored, to feel rested, and to keep these hormones doing what they need to be doing at an optimal level. So that first stage, we want to kind of think about it when we're just kind of sliding into that more relaxed space. We start to fall into light sleep. We're still kind of easily woken. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes. Now, some of you may say, takes you to 20 to 30 minutes, Lisa. It takes me, hours, right? So as we understand the relationship between stress and our bodies and the hormones and all of the way it works together, we'll understand why for some of us, it really does take more than 20 to 30 minutes. But ideally, that first and second stage is that. Then we can drop into deep sleep. So when we're in that deep sleep, there's a lot of restoration and repair that's happening in our entire being, especially on a physical level. And then we start to ramp up, and I say ramp up because that's the way our body reacts to the fourth stage, which is our dream stage. Now, although there is an activated state when you're dreaming, there is also something that's happening where your brain is kind of cleansing itself. And so we really want to also get that sleep. In fact, we want to try to get these cycles happening 4 to 6 times a night if we can. And that's where ideally 8 hours comes in, because we kind of need that 8 hours to be able to optimize the experience of these cycles and to get the most out of these cycles. So if you've been with us, we have gone through this stress sleep cyclical loop before, but it's always a good reminder, because this isn't just like necessarily common sense, right? But this is kind of an insight into what's happening in our body when we're not getting enough sleep, when we're getting stressed out. Like, what actually sends that green flag for cortisol to start getting released throughout our bodies? So in our brain, the hypothalamus kind of begins the whole process. It sends a message to the pituitary through the CRH. And from the pituitary, there's another message sent to our adrenal glands. Now, our adrenal glands produce a lot of our stress hormones, and cortisol is one of them. Adrenaline is another. There's a couple more, but they're very activating, as you can imagine, because as we've talked about before with the nervous system, our nervous system is putting us in an activated state so that we can protect ourselves if we need to run, if we need to fight something. It's kind of, stress becomes this indicator of danger. So the other thing is that's interesting about that, okay, is that so we can be reacting to something that's actually happening in our earth reality, and also we can be imagining something. We can be anticipating something. And that also, where our mind goes, our attention, where we give our attention, it actually can impact that biological response in our bodies. And so sometimes we're experiencing stress, even if something that might not be happening that feels stressful, and a lot of anxiety can create that, because when we're in a place of anxiety, a lot of us are anticipating. We're looking into the future, and a lot of times our futures are uncertain, right? We might all be feeling that right now in the collective. So when we're in that space, what is important to take away from this slide or this piece is that your body is responding biologically without your consciousness, right? So it needs our consciousness in a way to help kind of regulate our relationship to what's actually happening in reality and what's not happening, right? Because when we get better at regulating our biology, we now have a lot more agency over our moods and over our behaviors. So when we're in that stress state, everything that we just talked about is getting activated in our biology. And some of the things that are stressful are the very basic things that kind of threaten our sense of safety, that put us in that relationship to uncertainty. And then the body responds to protect us. Some of the things that also happen because of the way the nervous system is interacting with our experience and our bodies is that it creates a state in the body, viscerally, in our biology, as I was mentioning, to really be available for fear, just fear waiting to happen, anxiety waiting to happen, really activating those arousal pathways to the brain that put us in those states. And what's not on here, but is also a piece of this, is anger, right? So as a yoga teacher, I teach heated classes, you know, and people come in sometimes to these heated classes and we get weights and we get our heart rate up and we're doing all of this kind of like crazy stuff. It's literally a massive stress response to the body. The body could potentially think it's in danger. And then what happens is they leave that space. And if they leave that space without switching the gear from that kind of stress state, even though it's a physical stress that's maybe releasing emotional stress or mental stress, if we don't drop them back down into a calmer state, they are now ready to be anxious, to be angry, to be fearful. So this is the way stress comes in, and it becomes an issue with sleep. Why? Because when this biological response happens in our body, it actually kind of courses through our veins for an hour or two or more, right? So when we were looking at that graph, ideally we start to minimize our experience of stress as we move more towards the evening. Ideally, we would do that hot yoga class with weights in the heat in the morning or midday rather than at like 7 o'clock at night, so that we can allow our biology to do what it really wants to do to support us to be in rhythm with the moon and the sun, as we're ultimately not really designed, as I've mentioned before, to be nocturnal. And when we go into these stress states, so it was really interesting because, you know, doing this series with sleep, I had this experience the other night where I was in that almost falling asleep, you know, just that stage 1 kind of sleep. And I dropped into REM. I must have dropped into REM. I just remember this image, and it wasn't like a full dream. It was just an image of somebody I love driving the car, and I was in the passenger seat, and she began to have a seizure. And then that woke me up. And I couldn't fall asleep for like 2 hours, specifically because of what I'm explaining here, right? My body went into a stress response that coursed through my biology for a while. I had to do a lot of like, you know, resourcing that I know to do to calm my nervous system, but I really had a hard time actually coming to a place where I could get relaxed again quickly. It took some time. So it's actually been shown in research that 75% of insomnia is from major stress. So the better we can get at mastering our ability to manage our stress and to incorporate self-care into our day, so that by the time we get towards the end of the day, we're a little ready to just kind of drop into sleep, then we can go through these cycles of sleep. Our body can get what it needs for restoration, and our mind can get what it needs for cleansing, so that when we move into the next day, we're more optimal for whatever we have to face. But that doesn't always happen. In fact, because of that stress, a lot of times it affects our ability to sleep, as we've talked about, right? So, well, this is just a review on those types of things. And you'll notice the patterns and the themes if you've been in this series with me for the last 4 times. And it always comes back to the nervous system's response. So even when we're not sleeping, we're actually creating stress because the body needs to sleep, right? And that stress has a lot of similarities, the impacts, to the type of symptomology we might get just from experiencing stress throughout our day. So we might have a hard time being focused, feeling clear-headed, being connected to like our ability, to get things done, our capability to have that vitality and that energy. So it really affects our cognition. And then that stress, as we've heard over and over again, it affects our ability to digest food. It affects our reproductive organs. It affects our circulatory system. It affects our ability to, our relationship to our blood sugar. So our endocrine system everything is getting affected, right? So really taking attention and time to figuring out your personal recipe to cultivate that time in your 24 hours to get that rest and restoration that your nervous system and your physical body needs becomes critical. And when we can understand our biology, we can then begin to do things. Then we have to also work on our intentions and our why and the structures in our lives to really support us, right? Because sometimes, ideally, I do a lot with self-care, and I know some of the things sound ideal, and especially in the beginning, if you're caught up in this cycle, it can feel really hard. Like, how do I get out of this? And so sometimes switching that gear is going to take a period of even more discomfort so that things can settle in, so that you can get into a new rhythm, right? Because there's a part of you that might be like in the habit of these patterns. And so any type of change can always be a little uncomfortable as we go through it, because it requires us to do things differently. So what does that cycle really look like? Well, a lot of us, we wake up, our energy's low, we're fatigued, we go straight, I always use like, what is your morning ritual as a really good way to get a sense of how are you coping? How are you setting yourself up in the morning? Are you going and exercising? Is that how you wake up? Some people wake up and they go for a run. Or do you go straight to the coffee pot? Is a combination of those two things? Does that not look like anything that you do? Just really taking the time to look at your rituals, your daily rituals. What does your morning look like? If you have low energy, what are you going to get your energy up? Whether it's caffeine or vitamins, and not with judgment, but just like observation, like you're doing research, okay? And then looking at like realistically, like what are your stress cycles in your day? What are the things that start to create constriction in your body? And how do you cope with those things? Are you in a place where you can actually do anything about it? Do you feel imprisoned in relationship to that? And there's different types of stress, and we've talked about the different types of stress that can come in physically, mentally, emotionally, and we have all of those types of stress seep into our lives in different ways. So it's like taking an inventory of what are these stressors? How do I deal with them? What triggers me? Like this image of the guy like running, he's got a gun in his hand. Like, do you get angry? Do you get anxious? Do you contract inward? Do you go outward? Really looking and taking that inventory for yourself, and then look at how does it manifest in other ways, so with your mental health or well-being? You know, do you find that you run a little more anxious? Do you find that you have a harder time getting going? You know, you feel that inertia. Do you find that you're constantly irritable? And really, when we're willing to take that inventory, we can start to connect the dots. So, for especially when we understand that our biology becomes the container, right? So, if we're in a constant stress state and we're jacking ourselves up on caffeine and we're not doing things, finding healthy ways to cope with our stress, it really makes sense that we're going to be irritable. It really makes sense that we're going to run anxious. And it really makes sense that when we crash, we're going to crash really hard. And then how is that going to affect our sleep? Well, when we're in those irritable and anxious states, we're not going to be able to sleep. In fact, a lot of people, the sleep cycles or disruptions manifest in different ways, right? Some people can't fall asleep, like that guy, right? He's sitting there, he's just like in his head. He was probably the guy earlier. You know, that was probably him later in the day, right? Where other people, they're so done that they fall asleep right away, but something wakes them up in the middle of the night. Now, there's a lot of places this can come from. We have to look at our behaviors. We have to look at our lifestyle choices. And when we start to get into the hacks, we'll dive into that a little more. And that's what we're getting into. So we're going to start with just the sleeping tips. Some of these might be repetitive. I did add some new ones. But, you know, one of them that has not been up is that it's really important that we have some type of a self-care plan. And when I think of a self-care plan, I'm literally thinking like, how are you managing your stress? And really taking that inventory and being honest with yourself. Okay, are these healthy ways? Are these ways that are serving me? Are these ways that are helping me get to sleep or helping me manage my stress? Or are they in some other ways maybe contributing more to that lack of sleep or stress? And as we get into some more of the tips, I'll point out what that looks like. We do really good with routine. Our bodies do, actually. So creating a routine, I actually am not very good with routines. So I just want to acknowledge that for those of you that might struggle with that. Like, what's really important when it comes to sleep is we want to just make sure that we're waking up at the same time every day. So that means if you normally have an 8:00 a.m. meeting, and then on the weekends you're able to sleep till 2, that you don't do that. You know, you don't go to bed at 5 in the morning on a Saturday and then sleep till 2, because that's gonna throw off the rhythm, and it makes it just a little harder for your body. So I just want to acknowledge for people that have jobs that require them also to be flexible, like maybe they have some night shift swings and stuff like that. Really, that routine, incorporating that into your lifestyle is important. And then become better at understanding your own sleep cycles. So you can get a Fitbit. There's a ring out there called OURA, the Aura ring. It will give you your sleep cycles so that you can see, was I able to get those full 4 to 6 cycles? Did I get to go into REM? Am I going into REM? Do I ever get to deep sleep? What does it look like when you're sleeping? And what do your cycles look like? When you have that understanding, then you can begin to implement things and you can continue to track things. What I noticed, oh no, there it is. I did put it in. The next one. So create a sleep log, like a sleep journal, a stress log or a stress journal, and just track everything. And just start to then take a step back and look at what are the patterns? What are the things that you're patterned doing when you are getting good nights of sleep, and then when you're not, what's happening? So that way you can get a better understanding of what you really need. Also, we actually tend to do best when we sleep in a room that's 60 to 67 degrees. Nothing over 75 and nothing under 54. So just setting the temperature in the room can also help our bodies be more conducive for sleep. Eliminating noise. So this could look like different ways, right? For some people, it could look like not putting on TV, and others, it could look like I have sometimes a neighbor that comes in late and they turn on the shower and I can hear it and it wakes me up. So we want to minimize our exposure to noise in the ways that make the best sense. So there are other like sounds that we can actually bring in that actually, in a sense, helps minimize our exposure to noise. So sounds that are at 432 hertz, you can go on YouTube and just type that in. There's a million like sleep things that'll come up. There's hypnosis, there's white noise, there's sounds of nature. There's a lot of different things that we can put into the background. I would not recommend things like the news or extravagant movies or Netflix series, because we're still taking into our consciousness on some level everything that's happening there. So anything that will help drain out the noise that you might get exposed to in your environment, and also support you to just kind of fall more into that relaxed state. And then we've talked in the past, because it's so important, about blue light, and the blue light that's on our phones and that's on our screens and that's in our lights, and how we can get blue blocker glasses. On our phones, we can turn down the level of the lighting on our phones. We can, even if you like have social media apps and stuff, you can turn them dark. So these are just different ways that you can minimize the exposure of blue light coming into your eyes, because that also disrupts our circadian rhythm and patterns. And then we've also talked about the importance of having our rooms be really dark, covering up the little lights that might exist. And to add to that, you know, sometimes in our rooms, like having those blackout blinds or curtains can be really useful too, if we're getting light that comes in during the day and we need to sleep in a little later. It all depends on what your schedule looks like. Ritual is really important. When we create ritual in our life, we actually are in some ways reprogramming our neurobiology, and we're giving ourselves a way to take something that might feel abstract and bring it into our earth reality. When we create a ritual of honoring our bedroom, for example, like a sleep sanctuary, eliminating the light, eliminating the electronics, making it dark, bringing in useful sound and scent, which is on here, we'll get into in a minute, and making our room an environment that becomes transitionary for sleep, and then adding rituals. So for some people, it might be journaling or reading a book or doing some kind of prayer or doing some type of like gentle yoga that is actually designed to help support you for sleep. These types of rituals reprogram the neural net in our brain, and they start to support our mind, to support us to go to sleep and to remember these rituals and these patterns. We've talked about diet. We didn't get deep into actually diet, but just like really eating healthy, eating whole foods. And the main things here is really more the when rather than the what. That's kind of true and not true. So the what, just making healthful choices. When we get stressed out, what can happen with that cycle is we can start to have cravings for things like sugar, a lot of carbohydrates, which ultimately is sugar, and caffeine. And we can get into those cycles where we're using outside chemicals, and it's not really supporting that insidious cycle when we're in it. So when I was talking about it can be uncomfortable, I mean that there could be some days where maybe right now you are drinking a ton of coffee and you have to cut that off, and it's gonna be tough to go through that initial stage, right? But in the end, when you make these little adjustments to your lifestyle practices, limiting your alcohol, especially closer towards sleep time, because of what happens with your blood sugar levels and how it can wake you up in the middle of the night. And then obviously with, if you're eating popcorn right before you go to bed, that could do the same thing, right? So just really having that awareness, making sure that we're giving ourselves a way to physically release stress and during the day, not at night, as we talked about a little bit earlier, putting together an actual self-care plan for your stress management. As I said, maybe part of your rituals, your daily rituals, become a way for you to better understand what your stress triggers are and how to cope with them, and then finding healthier ways to regulate yourself so you can let go of the unhealthy behaviors that you may have been using. Being really conscious about what you expose yourself to. We are all energetic beings, and we have multiple layers, and every time we come into contact with each other, whether it's virtually or in person, we are exchanging energy, right? So we have to be very conscious about what we're allowing in, who we're allowing in, and also what we're putting out, right? Because that brings us more into our consciousness and into the present moment, rather than places of the past that can create depression, and the places of uncertainty in the future that can cultivate anxiety. Using the power of scent through essential oils and aromatherapy, lavender and frankincense are both really nice scents to help cultivate a sense of ease and sleep. And there's more. You can get into the oils and find out what scents really work for your alchemical constitution. And then a potato, whether it's a sweet potato, a regular potato, just a couple hours before you go to bed can help the release of neuropharmacology in your brain to help you with depression and also to help set you up for sleep. So the potato trick is a useful one. And then now we'll get into some more like stress hacks. So what are little like appetizers you can take throughout the day so that as you're moving through your day and you're taking on stress, that you're also releasing so that you're not under chronic stress all day long and then wired at night and unable to sleep. So just like we started, those 3 deep breaths, allowing yourself to become present and into your body, maybe using that mantra, I am, and using the visualization of sending the breath out back into the earth and saying here to yourself. And actually that makes me, I can't remember if it's on here or not, but just the fact that we understand that the power of our thought can influence our biology, right? So if we know that when we think stressful thoughts and we go into places of anxiousness because of the unknown, we also have that same ability when we're conscious to take ourselves places that are going to cultivate sense of safety, a sense of connection through our own guided imagery and imagination. So always knowing that you can use imagery, you can just close your eyes and allow yourself to take yourself to those places that would give you feelings of peace and ease or joy or happiness. And we can do that through memory too. So if there was something that you remember, just kind of doing a memory bath of something positive where you really felt good in your body allows you to draw that into the now. Bringing our awareness, I always talk with my clients about how the one thing we can control is our attention. And our attention influences our awareness, and it also helps us expand our awareness. So using exercises where we expand our awareness to connecting to the elements within ourselves that are in nature, help us reconnect to ourselves. And in today's world, with all of the technology and the hustle and the bustle, we all are in it. It's really important that we're remembering to connect to the earth and to all the elements in nature, like water and fire and air. And we can do that literally just by bringing the attention to our bodies and that earth energy that exists in our bones, and the water element that exists in our blood and our lymphatic system, and the air element that is constantly passing through our lungs and giving us life, and also the fire, right? Because our bodies are warm, and our digestive system is constantly using that fire energy to digest food and turn it into energy. And sometimes we really feel that fire depending also on our constitution. So just whatever, or you feel the water or whatever it is, just finding ways to take a pause and connect to those elements of nature that exist within you. And then better than doing that, just get in nature. Go put your feet on the earth, like bare feet to the dirt. Go take a jump into the ocean. Even if it's cold, go feel alive and feel that water on your skin. Go, and connect to nature in your favorite ways. Maybe it's planting something in your yard, or cultivating even like a little garden where you can grow your own tomato plants or something like that. Just really connect to nature and connect to Gaia and connect to those elements in nature in your physical reality. Also, just taking the time to scan our body. When we do this, what it allows us to do, and this is one of the things I love about yoga, and it's why I integrate yoga into a lot of the work I do with people, is it gives us the ability to expand our awareness of ourselves. When we can become a witness of our own body and the sensations that we are experiencing, then we are also in that same moment connecting to a part of ourselves that is not the body or any of those sensations that we might be experiencing. And in that space, there is space. And so we can breathe and we can release stress because we are really portaling in a way. Another element is the ocean. And the ocean constantly is for me, a demonstration of how things are constantly changing, right? The waves come in, they come out. Sometimes the ocean is stormy. Sometimes the ocean is calm. And we can just take our attention inward and notice how our breath operates just like the waves. And so do our thoughts. And we can allow that space for change to exist within us. And to the elements in our constitution that we can use to connect to those elements that are outside of us that have that symbolism. So any type of really demonstration of self-love, and self-love can be meditations, as I mentioned before. This link right here would take you to 7 different types of self-love meditations. You can also just go onto YouTube and type in self-love meditation. But it really, I would say, is anytime we take a minute to just be, to acknowledge ourselves and to give ourselves some gratitude, acknowledging something that we're proud of, something we love about ourselves, something we're grateful for today about ourselves, is a form of self-love. And taking our breath and just doing some soft belly type breathing, where we actually send the breath all the way down to the belly and we feel the belly expand, and then exhaling and letting that belly soften back. I think I'm pretty sure that I went over, but I hope you found it useful. And I really appreciate your time. And I'll give it back to Nicole.
Yeah.
She'll set you up for the future.
A big thank you, Lisa. That was a wonderful sleep series for everyone to absorb. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Should you guys have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. And if you love today's class, you can sign up for more events on our mobile app or accesselitenow.com. Well, thank you again, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.